I think the culture is really important. I think if you're going to spend 8 hours of your life, each day working somewhere, then it's got to be a place that you enjoy working and being. And so it's been really important to kind of create that sort of environment for people. And it's something I've always been interested in, but it's something I've always wanted to. So in any job that I've had, it's always been important that I've been happy in my work, I guess. I think by asking kind of quite serious questions about what makes people happy at work and motivated and productive, and those are really complex questions to answer, and I don't think we've even got all the answers yet. I think we're still sort of wrestling with them. I've been interested in this for a long time. My first job was at Cadbury's, and I was made for a spell production manager of cream eggs, and the way that the production line ran was everybody was effectively biological robots, just kind of doing manual tasks day in, day out. And I decided to spice up their lives and make things much more interesting. And it was a disaster. And fights broke out. And I kind of came away from that bruise. But actually, when I started Maiden, I kind of wanted to go again and do something different and make it a really special place. And it's been a long journey. As I say, we don't ever see we'll be at the end of the road because we're always learning things and making improvements. That's part of the culture, I guess. So I always say what we're trying to do is get people to behave like owners. I think being the owner of a company rather than an employee of a company, your mindset changes. You kind of think about things in a very different way. And what you realise is if everybody can start to adopt that kind of mindset, then the whole of the management of the organisation becomes something different. I kind of got into this round of our evolution when I read some research which basically showed that as organisations get bigger and bigger, they get less and less productive per employee. So the efficiency just drops. But as communities get larger and larger, so we go from villages to towns to cities, actually the productivity per head of population actually improves. And that raises the question, how do you run a company as if it's a community or a village or a town? So that was kind of the question I first started to ask myself. The second was, if you have a manager who's managing 5 people, and let's supposing that manager is paid £50,000 a year, what you're effectively doing is paying £10,000 more per person to have them managed. And if you have quite a deep hierarchy, that multiplies up. So there's a huge amount of money goes into managing people. If they're able to manage themselves, then actually that's a huge saving that can obviously be redeployed on better things. And that's, again, the challenge is how do you get people to do their jobs effectively and productively without needing managing? So that's a whole raft of questions that kind of come behind that as well. So I think, first of all, establishing the culture and the values is really important. So that's the first thing we did when we tried to do this, is say, what are our values? Collaboration is really important. We need people to work together. So in a typical hierarchical organisation, what you get is a lot of internal politics. You get a lot of people withholding information because information is power. And that actually just stifles productivity and it stifles the effectiveness of the organisation. So you've got to get rid of that. Collaboration as a value and that kind of, and transparency is obviously another one. That sharing of information is really, really key to making the whole kind of operation work, sort of well, and then we've got forward thinking, which actually really speaks into what we're trying to do here, which is to create the health service of tomorrow using digital technologies. And then contribution, and that's about valuing the contribution that people make, not treating them as slaves on some kind of production line, but actually recognising that everybody's adding value, whatever role it is that they're playing in the organisation, and making sure that they feel valued and rewarded within the context of what it is that we're trying to do here. And that the credit is placed where it's due. One of my big bugbears in many jobs I've been in is people taking credit for other people's work, and we absolutely don't want that to happen. It causes a huge amount of discontent, and so it's really important that And I think we do that quite well. I think that we could do better, but I think we're trying hard to make sure that we do recognise and reward people for the contribution that they make. So the first thing we did was strip out all the managers and actually replace them with a whole series of coaches. So everybody in the organisation has access to a coach if they want to. And today, about two-thirds of Maiden have two-thirds of the staff have a coach. Not everybody has kind of adopted one yet, but that's growing, and we hope in time everybody will work with the coach to support them. We work in self-managing teams, but I think we are quite unique that we've adopted agile processes as well. And we actually did that first. So in terms of this journey, we kind of stripped out the waterfall style of management and replaced it with agile processes. First of all, in our software teams, which is kind of where it grew in the first place. But now we've moved that agile working to every single team in the business. Everybody works in usually a 2-week sprint where they agree what work they're going to do at the beginning of the 2 weeks. They work for 2 weeks, and then at the end they do something called a sprint review where they demonstrate that they delivered everything that they said they would deliver. And what they actually plan to deliver is a process of negotiation. So we don't tell people what they've got to do in 2 weeks. We say, look, this is a backlog, the to-do list. What do you think you can do from this list in the next 2 weeks? And these are the priorities. And so they will basically commit to delivering so many of these items. And then 2 weeks later, we turn up and we check that all of that's been done. And the beauty of that is that you don't have to manage people over that 2-week period. If they get stuck, then they've got plenty of places to go for help, usually within their own teams or with other teams. They don't need to go to a manager because there's plenty of expertise around them. And I don't care what they're doing during that 2 weeks. So I remember a year ago in our old office, I walked in and all of the development teams were absent. All the offices were empty. And I said, where is everybody? And apparently they were all down in Bath trampolining because a trampoline park had opened. And that was a kind of defining moment for me because, as a manager or as an owner, you obviously kind of can get quite concerned if you walk into your building and nobody's there working. But actually what happened is they all came back and they worked into the evening instead. And the rule is as long as they deliver the sprint, they can be anywhere they want and they can do anything they want. So that's kind of how we work. And in terms of the self-managing teams, then people do take on roles. Like we have Scrum Masters in our dev teams and we have the equivalent in some of our other teams as well. We have product owners. So people can take on leadership roles, but they're not managing the people, they're managing the work, and that's the kind of important distinction. One of the things we've done throughout the organisation is have a decision-making protocol. So anybody can make a decision, and they have to follow a whole kind of a list of rules, I guess, in order to make the decision. So they have to consult relevant people, they have to consider the cost, they have to be competent to make that decision, they have to have clarity about the area in which they're making that decision. We call them the 7 C's, and I'm not listed 7 because I can't remember all 7. But and then we have a challenge process. So if someone doesn't agree with the decision, then there's a whole lot of C's that they can use to challenge the decision. But anyone can make a decision. We don't have budgets, so people actually are allowed to spend money. If you need to spend money to do your job, we let them spend the money. And we've never even had a kind of cap on that. And nobody has abused that in the whole history of the company. So, and if somebody did, it would only ever happen once, and you would kind of, do something about it because obviously we check our finances at regular intervals. But it's just worked brilliantly. And people do make decisions. They do feel empowered to be able to spend the company's money if they feel they need to get the jobs done. And we don't have all of these sign-off processes that slow everything down in bureaucratic companies. So it means that we're just very nimble and agile and we can get things done quite quickly. The one thing we've not talked about is recruitment. Because actually the first thing you learn when you do this is you have to recruit the right people. So we've done a wholesale change of our recruitment processes. And before, I would summarise it as saying, when we first started recruiting, all our recruiting was based on skills and experience. We then moved it to recruiting people based on aptitude and attitude. And I think we've now moved it again, whereas before our interview questions were designed to find the people we wanted. Our interview questions are now designed to screen out the people we don't want, because not everybody thrives in this type of environment. You have to have your head in a kind of a different place. So you're actually trying to find the people who this doesn't work for. And at Maiden, so let's be quite honest about this, at Maiden, we've probably over time lost 20% of the staff that we started with, partly due to the way that we work. And that again is what other companies have been through this journey of experience. 20% of their staff have not really been able to kind of get their heads around it and get in that mindset, and they've decided that they're better off elsewhere. But now we're finding the right people, and everybody that we add to the organisation adds to us. Because when you have a flat structure, actually the whole kind of mood of the company is built up by the collective psyches of each individual. So there isn't a kind of an ethos that's delivered from on high. It evolves from the bottom up, and every person that comes in actually kind of adds to the culture that we're creating. We go to lots of networking events where people are interested in this, and quite a lot of events where people are interested in flat structures and self-managing teams. We also go to a lot of separate events where people are interested in agile working. And what's really interesting is that they're never the same people there. As far as I know, we are the only company that's adopted agile working practices across the board and a flat structured way of working. So I think we are quite unique at the space. So I guess when people ask me, that's where I start, that we've found ourselves in a unique place. If you ask me why it really works, I think it is that combination of flat structures and agile. I think there are people really struggling with flat structure and they're not making it work, but they believe in it. And there are people who are actually struggling with agile because we have plenty of people come and visit us here who are trying to adopt Scrum in their software teams, but their managers above them keep putting blockers in place. They keep stopping them from doing it properly. And they're really, really frustrated. And I think by combining the two together, and I think by the directors, getting out of the way and there being no managers to kind of put the brakes on things and just let the whole thing happen, it's so far proved to be, a really positive exercise. And in the early days, did we want to turn back? Because we did go through a painful process where we were converting from one to the other. We certainly asked the question, but no, we decided that we really believed in this and we wanted to continue. And as actually each day progresses, we're really glad we did, and it's getting better and better. The research says that companies have adopted this kind of working practices and this kind of structure are much more successful in the marketplace than traditional hierarchical companies, particularly in kind of new age tech environments. So there is a whole lot of evidence now building up to demonstrate that companies that are doing what we're doing actually are going to be more successful. Certainly we are hitting all of our targets. The company is growing. We set business plans like everybody else, and we try and meet them. It seems to be working, and we're certainly not about to give up on it. Yeah. We wanted to know, well, how can we design this company so that, when we go beyond 30, 40 people, that we retain the culture we've got, and think we've started to have these conversations when we're about 20 people. So that's kind of, in some ways, the questions we were asking that started us on this journey, and that's going back, quite a few years now. In terms of how far can you go with this, because I think people feel, well, the wheels must fall off at some point. But I only need to point to Buurtzorg in Holland, who have created a sort of a huge district nursing sort of empire, all based around self-managing teams and flat structure, and there are 70,000 of them. So we've got some way to go before, if we can maintain this. But actually, if it's working and you do get these self-managing teams working within themselves, productively and efficiently, and communicating well with the teams that they need to communicate with, who are sitting beside them, then I don't see in the near future any reason to change the journey that we're on.